Shock fills the air as the protagonist jolts awake in a strange, messy hotel room. His head feels heavy, his memory clouded, and for a moment he cannot comprehend where he is or what happened the night before. Panic flickers in his eyes as he sits upright, scanning the unfamiliar surroundings. Then comes the real shock: he is not alone. Right beside him lies a breathtaking woman, sleeping soundly as if nothing is out of place. Just as confusion overwhelms him, the sharp buzz of his phone cuts through the silence. On the screen, a string of furious messages from someone named Zhao demands his attention. The name stirs bitter memories. This was the girl who had shattered his heart after their freshman year of college. She had blocked him completely, cutting him off without remorse, yet here she was now, texting as if they were still together. Uneasy and desperate for answers, he checks the calendar. His heart nearly stops when he sees the date, October 8th. A chilling realization strikes him: he has somehow gone back in time. Memories of heartbreak resurface, her cruel words echoing in his head as he recalls her walking away with an older man, telling him to just disappear. He had been devastated then, blinded by love, swearing he would never let go. But this time, things are different. He notices that her first message is nothing more than another shameless request for money. A cold smirk spreads across his face as clarity sets in. Love had blinded him once, but not again. With unshakable resolve, he types a message to Xia, ending their relationship once and for all. Her response is immediate and furious, demanding to know if he truly means it. Without hesitation, he confirms that they should go their separate ways. Her last warning, filled with rage, tells him not to regret his choice. But the protagonist's decision is firm. This is the moment his future begins to change. He finally cuts ties with his past. But before the sound fades, a dazzling blue screen suddenly flickers into existence before his eyes. His heart skips a beat as bold letters flash across it: "Congratulations, Tycoon system activated." For a moment, he is frozen in disbelief. Could this really be happening? Then excitement surges through him, and a thought ignites in his mind: his life is about to take a turn unlike anything before. The glowing interface displays his personal stats, followed by an announcement that leaves him stunned. From this moment onward, he will earn money every single second. Almost immediately, the system rewards him with a starter pack. Without hesitation, he accepts, and the rewards leave him speechless: 10 million in cash, a luxury supercar, an exclusive shopping card, and something called a friendly scanner. Checking his account confirms the money has truly arrived, but curiosity lingers around the mysterious scanner. What could it possibly be used for? Before he can ponder further, the woman lying beside him stirs in her sleep, murmuring softly. His gaze sharpens as an idea forms. Gripping the device, he points it toward her, eager to test its power. In an instant, the scanner reveals her stats, detailed information glowing before his eyes. But one attribute puzzles him: privacy. Driven by curiosity, he taps on it. The explanation nearly makes his breath catch. Privacy represents the number of partners she has had. The number displayed is a solitary one, meaning he is the very first man in Yusher's life. Memories wash over him, pulling him back to his past life. He recalls the night when, broken-hearted, he stumbled into a bar and found her there. She had been drinking alone, sorrow hidden behind her beauty, her mood dark and heavy. Their meeting that night had been a twist of fate, not born of love, but of pain and alcohol. As he reflects silently, the woman finally awakens with a faint gasp. Her eyes flicker toward him, watching his expression with suspicion. A teasing smile curls on her lips as she calls him a Casanova, mocking the way he had been sighing and grinning to himself. But the protagonist only smirks in return, his gaze steady and confident. Leaning closer, he denies ever reminiscing about the past, leaving her more intrigued than before. The protagonist whispers softly that his only regret was not meeting her sooner. His words strike like an arrow, leaving the woman completely flustered and unable to respond. Almost instantly, a notification flashes before his eyes: system reward, special card and god-tier tongue technique. His heart races at the thought, realizing just how powerful this new skill could be. With a confident grin, he imagines how easily he could take her to paradise with it. Without hesitation, the young man activates his new ability and presses his lips against hers. The kiss is unlike anything she has ever experienced, filled with sensation so intense that she gasps in shock. Pulling away with a smirk, he tells her this is only the beginning. From there, the two surrender to the moment, spending the entire night together in a haze of passion and desire. When morning comes, sunlight filters into the room as he stretches lazily, only to notice something unusual on the bed. A neat stack of cash rests beside him, along with a note. His brows knit together in confusion. Did Yusher really think of him as an escort? Picking up the note, he sees the payment clearly written out: 10,000 yuan. A surge of irritation rises within him. The gesture is insulting, though at the same time, he can't help but find it strangely interesting. Still, what truly bothers him is that she left without giving him her contact information. Shaking his head, he refocuses on the card he received from the system. Curiosity sparks as he wonders how it functions. The system promptly explains that it is a cashback multiplier, granting him returns on every bit of money he spends. A slow, determined smile spreads across his face. With this kind of power, wasting the opportunity is out of the question. He resolves then and there to transform his destiny and rise as a true tycoon. His mind races with possibilities. In this timeline, several world-famous tech companies have not even been founded yet. If he plays his cards right, he can secure countless shares before anyone else and build an empire. Holding the sleek car key in his hand, he thinks about another advantage: the city currently has no restrictions on real estate purchases. This makes it the perfect time to invest heavily in property. As these thoughts ignite his ambition, a stunning woman suddenly approaches his car. A striking woman suddenly perches herself on the hood of the protagonist's bright yellow sports car. Flashing a charming smile, she casually asks if the luxurious vehicle belongs to him. With calm composure, he confirms that it does and immediately questions what she wants. Putting on an innocent expression, she explains that the pipes in her home burst and boldly asks him for a ride. Something about her story feels off. Narrowing his eyes, the young man discreetly activates his scanner. Information about the woman, Chen Liki, instantly appears before him. Her friendship level is remarkably high, which catches him off guard, but his attention quickly shifts to the privacy attribute, 28 partners. The number alone makes him recoil internally, setting off loud warning bells. Moments later, inside the car, she awaits his answer with a hopeful look, but his response is blunt and cold. He rejects her request outright, saying that being with 28 different people is far too much for him. With that, he drives off, leaving the stunned woman frozen on the sidewalk, completely shaken by his uncanny knowledge of her past. Still reeling, she mutters that he was incredibly handsome, while an older man nearby watches the scene unfold in utter confusion. The old man then steps forward, offering to help her with her so-called broken pipes, proudly claiming he's been a professional for 30 years. Annoyance flashes across her face, and she immediately lashes out, calling him a pervert and a creep. The poor man is left dumbfounded. His technique was flawless. Why was she so angry? Her disgust grows as she snaps at him to get lost. He tries to follow after her, still bewildered, while the crowd around them bursts into laughter. Finally, another bystander explains to him what she actually meant by pipes, and the realization leaves him speechless. Shaking his head, he mutters how strange the younger generation has become. Humiliated, the woman storms off, cursing her luck and complaining about how everything had gone wrong that day. Meanwhile, the protagonist arrives at a bustling real estate agency. Two agents stand at the entrance, one a nervous newcomer and the other her seasoned boss. The manager takes one glance at the sports car and assumes he's just another spoiled rich kid, not worth his time. With a dismissive wave, he instructs the rookie, Xiaosa, to handle the customer alone. Confidence radiating from every step, the young man climbs out of his car and strides toward the agency. The manager smirks, puffing on his cigarette, telling Xiaosa to stick to their practice procedure. Summoning her courage, the young agent hurries forward, introducing herself politely as Xiao Xia from Leonia Real Estate Agency. Without wasting time, the protagonist tells her to help him find a house. She quickly asks about his budget, her tone still cautious. From a distance, the manager chuckles at the exchange, convinced that Xiaosa is wasting her time on a client who looks flashy but probably has no real money. Inside the agency, she begins by showing him cheaper properties, thinking that's what he could afford. But then his calm voice cuts through her presentation. He wants to see properties in the 1 million yuan range. The young agent's eyes widen in surprise at the mention of 1 million yuan. Struggling to keep her composure, she quickly nods and begins searching for suitable properties on her tablet. Minutes pass before she suddenly realizes she forgot an important detail. With a nervous smile, she asks if he has any location preferences. The protagonist answers calmly, requesting places that are easy to rent out. Furnished or not doesn't matter to him. As she works, he studies her closely. Her inexperience is obvious, but there's something refreshing about her sincerity. Deciding to satisfy his curiosity, he quietly activates his scanner, gathering information about her in secret. Moments later, she presents several options near a bustling commercial street, each with different price tags. The young man recalls that his starter card carries a strict limit of 1 million yuan per purchase. That means he needs to carefully plan how to maximize the bonus it provides. Noticing his silence, the agent nervously asks if he isn't satisfied with the listings. But his mind is elsewhere, calculating. Finally, he looks up and asks a bold question: can the price of the more expensive houses be negotiated? Before she can respond, he doubles down. If the price can be lowered to 1 million each, he will buy all 5 properties on the spot. The agent is stunned, her jaw nearly dropping at the sheer audacity of the offer. He doesn't hesitate, making it clear he will pay everything in cash. To make the deal even more enticing, he adds that once the purchase is complete, he will hire her directly to manage all the rentals for him. Her face lights up instantly, excitement brimming in her eyes as she realizes the enormous commission waiting for her. Determination hardens in her voice as she promises to secure him that price. From across the room, the manager overhears the entire conversation. His cigarette nearly falls from his lips as the truth sinks in. Regret twists his expression. He had dismissed this client as a spoiled kid, but in reality, he was a golden opportunity. Bitterness gnaws at him, and he silently curses himself, wishing he could slap his own face for such a mistake. An hour later, the atmosphere shifts dramatically. Now dressed sharply in a suit, the same manager personally presents the final contract to the protagonist. The total price reads clearly, 5 million yuan. With steady confidence, the protagonist takes the pen and signs the contract. As he hands it back, he assures the young agent that he trusts her and will reach out again for future purchases. Her heart races at his words. To already be planning more acquisitions, just what kind of tycoon was this man? Excitement bubbles within her as she clutches the contract, thrilled at the fortune she has just secured. Suddenly, a glowing notification appears before the protagonist's eyes. The system congratulates him, showing that from his 5 purchases, he has received a staggering 230 million yuan in cashback. His entire body tenses with exhilaration. The system immediately levels up, boosting his passive income until he now earns nearly 1 yuan every second. A sharp grin crosses his lips. This woman truly was his lucky star, and he silently vows to seize every opportunity this second life offers. Moments later, he calls the young agent aside to a quiet corner, his intense gaze never leaving her face. From across the room, the manager narrows his eyes. He muses that the rookie should invite this mysterious client to dinner as a gesture of thanks. But before she can even form the words, the protagonist makes a bold promise. His voice is calm, but the weight behind it is undeniable. If she stays by his side, he will ensure her a life filled with unimaginable luxury and comfort. The boldness of his declaration leaves her cheeks burning red. Embarrassed and overwhelmed, she tries to politely decline, stammering as she searches for the right response. Yet he doesn't give her the chance. Cutting her off, he simply asks for her bank account number. The woman freezes, stunned by the unexpected request. Why would he want such a thing? With genuine confusion, she asks why he intends to transfer money to her. His reply is simple, yet utterly disarming. She had been his lucky star, and this was merely a small gesture of gratitude. Completely bewildered, she stares at him, unable to make sense of his words. But only a few minutes later, her phone buzzes with a notification. Her eyes go wide in shock as she sees the transfer amount, her breath catching in disbelief. The sum is astronomical compared to anything she had ever imagined. The protagonist, however, only smiles knowingly. To him, this amount is nothing more than pocket change compared to the fortune he has just gained with her help. In that instant, her feelings toward him shift completely. Her friendship level with him soars, and without hesitation, she turns to him with a shy but genuine smile. This time, it is she who invites him to dinner, an invitation born of gratitude, curiosity, and a spark of something more. The protagonist reflects on the power of money, realizing how easily it can strengthen bonds and boost friendship. Watching the numbers rise gives him a quiet satisfaction. After exchanging WeChat details with the young agent, she takes a longer look at him. The more she studies his sharp features and effortless charm, the more attractive he appears in her eyes. Her imagination drifts toward something more intimate, and a daring thought crosses her mind: she wouldn't mind if things went beyond business. But to her disappointment, with a polite smile, he simply thanks her for her efforts and announces that he will be leaving. His words catch her completely off guard, leaving her momentarily frozen in place. Refusing to accept what she just heard, the agent suddenly dashes after him, calling out his name with desperation. By the time she reaches the street, he is already behind the wheel of his sleek sports car. With a confident grin, he raises his hand in a casual wave before driving away. She watches him disappear, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. A strange emptiness wells up inside her chest, a feeling she cannot quite explain. 20 minutes later, the protagonist arrives home. Stepping inside, he greets his mother, who has been waiting eagerly. She welcomes him warmly and offers a plate of chilled watermelon, while his father casually asks about his plans for the upcoming graduation trip. Without hesitation, the young man answers that he intends to head to Modu, eager to explore the area around the university he will soon attend. His father nods in approval, telling his wife to transfer travel money to their son. With a playful smile, his mother teases that spoiling him so much will only make it harder for him to find a wife in the future. The comment makes him grimace, and he quickly asks her to drop the subject. Deep down, though, his thoughts grow serious. This time, he vows silently, he will never let his parents down the way he once did in his past life. The very next day, the protagonist grumbles to himself about the high price he paid for buying the ticket at the last minute. The narrow aisle proves frustrating as he carefully squeezes past other passengers, politely asking them to make room. Then, in the middle of the crowded cabin, his eyes land on a familiar face. Recognition flashes in his gaze, and he calls out to the woman in surprise. The familiar woman turns out to be Zhou Ying, who immediately recognizes the protagonist the moment their eyes meet. He confirms with a nod that this is his assigned seat, and by coincidence, she explains that hers is right beside his, near the window. With a polite smile, she thanks him as she carefully squeezes past to take her seat. Before the two can settle in, a man wearing glasses suddenly leans forward, inserting himself into their conversation. His tone is playful, clearly trying to flirt with Zhou Ying. The protagonist ignores the intruder completely and instead looks at the girl, suggesting she take the inner seat for more comfort. The man in glasses immediately complains, saying passengers can't just switch seats at will. His protest is short-lived. The The protagonist cuts him off sharply, stating that they are together and how they choose to sit is none of his concern, but with no room to argue, he falls silent as they take their places. Once seated, the nosy man resumes his interruptions. He casually asks Zoe what brings her to Modu. With composure, she replies that she's traveling for work, then turns to the protagonist and asks about his reason for visiting. He answers lightly, saying he grew bored staying at home and decided to take a vacation to relax. Not wanting to be ignored, the man in glasses quickly introduces himself as Chen, boasting that he is also heading to Modu. He smugly adds that his father sent a car to pick him up, offering Zoe a ride. The protagonist's expression remains calm as he declines, explaining that their hotel already provides an airport pickup service. Curious, Chen presses further, asking which hotel they are staying at. The protagonist answers with a single word, Mominian. The response leaves the intruder stunned. He repeats the name aloud, his disbelief obvious. The Mominian is no ordinary hotel, it's an ultra-luxury resort built with billions. Scoffing, Chen claims he stayed there once and insists a regular room doesn't include pickup. But the protagonist's smile only deepens as he clarifies, he booked a villa. Chen's face pales, his disbelief growing. He demands to know if the protagonist is serious, while Zoe can't help but chime in. With wide eyes, she points out that a single night at the villa costs 80,000 yuan. She studies him curiously, admitting she never expected him to be such a rich kid. With a confident smile, he fires back that she shouldn't talk, after all, she's a rich kid too. His words stir memories. He recalls Zhou Ying's reputation in high school, where she was known as the school belle. Her family was wealthy and influential, yet she had always been quiet, focused entirely on her studies. Back then, no boy dared approach her. He himself had been preoccupied with his ex-girlfriend, though he remembered hearing whispers that Zhou Ying's family eventually fell into financial difficulties. Her expression in the present confirms it. A shadow crosses her features as she quietly admits she isn't really a rich kid anymore. Realizing he touched a sensitive wound, the young man quickly steers the conversation away, softening the mood. Soon, they're laughing about the good old days in high school. Zoe smiles, her laughter breaking the awkward tension, and agrees those times were truly fun. Seeing her relaxed again, the protagonist feels the moment is right. With quiet determination, he decides to activate his system and scan her once more. The system screen blinked to life before his eyes. Her privacy was at 0, leaving her completely exposed to his view, while her friendship level had already risen to 75. The young man's brows furrowed slightly. 75? Could it be she had already been paying attention to me back in high school? The thought lingered in his mind, but before he could dig deeper, the plane touched down. The moment they stepped off, a stunning woman in a fitted suit was already waiting at the arrival gate. She bowed politely and introduced herself as Wang Yoyan, his private butler assigned by the villa. Turning to Zoe, he casually asked where she would be staying. She admitted softly that she'd be at a friend's house in Puang. Without hesitation, he insisted on giving her a ride and instructed his butler to take her there first. From a distance, the man in glasses, Chen, stood frozen, his expression sour. He clenched his fists and muttered to himself about seizing a chance to save her later and steal away a romantic night. The ride lasted 25 minutes. When they finally arrived at her destination, Zoe turned to him with a gentle smile, thanking him sincerely. She asked for his contact information, promising to treat him to dinner soon. He agreed with a teasing grin, joking that she'd better not forget her promise. They exchanged contacts, and with a final wave, he reassured her not to worry about the ride. Not far away, the intruder stood speechless. His so-called heroic plan had completely crumbled before it even began. Watching her walk away, his face twisted in disbelief, unable to accept how easily the protagonist let her go. A few hours later, the protagonist arrived at his luxurious villa, thinking to himself that the stay had been worth every penny. The butler welcomed him and informed that his bath was ready. Deciding to unwind, he began to move toward it, but suddenly, the woman appeared behind him and grabbed him without warning. Startled, the protagonist turned around and demanded to know what she was doing. With a calm expression, she explained that the service included helping him undress, though his underwear was something he would need to handle on his own. Soon after, he sank into the warmth of the hot springs bath. Through the rising steam, he noticed the woman nearby and asked why she was still there. The butler stepped forward and clarified that part of the service also included scrubbing his back, though the woman would not be responsible for washing every part of him. Relaxing into the soothing water, the protagonist let his thoughts drift. Up close, the woman's beauty was undeniable, and he couldn't help but imagine a more personal kind of service. As if responding to his unspoken thoughts, she began slowly removing her clothes. Gracefully, she stepped into the water beside him. The protagonist's heart skipped a beat, his wild thoughts interrupted when the butler suddenly asked why his face was flushed red and what exactly he had been thinking about. Embarrassed, he quickly looked away. Not long after, the butler invited the young master to attend a hotel reception later that evening. Curious, the protagonist asked about the occasion. The butler explained that there would be no formal dress code and that the event was being held for an upcoming auction. Hearing this, the protagonist simply nodded with calm confidence and confirmed his participation. Arriving at the grand party with her by his side, the protagonist was immediately greeted by an employee who treated him with great respect, clearly recognizing him as an important guest. Before parting, the woman accompanying him wished him a pleasant evening, flashing a warm smile as he stepped into the dazzling main hall. The crowd murmured with excitement as an item had just been sold for 5 million. The protagonist calmly scanned the room, taking in the scene. Moments later, the auctioneer revealed the next piece, a world-renowned luxury brand watch, one so rare that only 10 existed across the globe. With dramatic flair, the man announced the starting price, 15 million yuan. The hall buzzed with anticipation as the auctioneer's voice rang out, urging the bidding to begin. The protagonist's eyes narrowed. He knew the true value of this watch. Its price would only soar higher in the future, eventually surpassing 25 million with ease. Recognizing the perfect opportunity, he raised his paddle, number 35, and confidently placed the first bid at 15.5 million. Almost instantly, another bidder lifted paddle number 8, raising the offer to 16 million. The competition grew fierce as numbers climbed rapidly, the crowd watching in awe. Whispers spread, many believing it was madness to spend such sums on a mere watch. Yet the protagonist remained composed, each of his bids sharp and calculated. At last, the auctioneer slammed down the gavel. Sold, he declared, finalizing the winning price at 18 million. The room erupted in surprise, and the host congratulated buyer number 35 on his victory. As the attention shifted toward him, 2 wealthy young men approached with interest. The protagonist introduced himself smoothly as Jiang Cheng, his sharp gaze sizing them up. The blonde-haired one gave a knowing smile, revealing that he had been bidder number 8. With curiosity, he asked whether Jiang Cheng was a luxury watch expert, intrigued by the boldness of his purchase. The protagonist calmly replied that he wasn't an expert at all. In fact, this was his very first time purchasing a watch. He explained that he was simply testing the waters. Hearing that, the blonde man was left stunned by the boldness of spending such a sum on a first-time buy. With genuine curiosity, he asked why he had never seen him around before. Jiang Cheng revealed that he had only just arrived yesterday to begin his college studies. The young man was surprised, almost in disbelief. At 18, he admitted he wouldn't have had the courage to make such a daring move, and he couldn't help but admire the protagonist's confidence. With a smile, he extended an invitation for them to hang out sometime. The protagonist gave a nod, agreeing to the friendly proposal and gaining himself a new acquaintance in the process. Not long after, a familiar sound rang in his ears. The system's notification announced that his level had increased. Doing the math, he realized his annual income had now surpassed 300 million. Yet, as impressive as the figure was, he knew it was still far from enough. For the grand ambitions he held, this amount was nothing more than a drop in the ocean. Later, as he descended the stairs, the protagonist's steps slowed when he spotted a familiar figure. Standing there was the very woman he had spent the night with before, the same one he first encountered at the hotel. Her eyes widened slightly in surprise at the sight of him. With a teasing smirk, she called him a kiddo, admitting she hadn't expected him to be a rich young master. To her, he had seemed like nothing more than an ordinary poor student. Amused, the woman leaned closer and suggested he come to her villa, pointing out that the auction was nearly finished anyway. She clearly wanted another night with him. The protagonist accepted her offer without hesitation, and she playfully warned him that this time, he had better put in more effort than before, her tone laced with heat. Just as the mood shifted, a sudden interruption broke the moment. A man stormed over and seized her by the arm, his face twisted with possessiveness. He introduced himself as Jiang Yu, her ex-fiancée, and claimed she still belonged to him. The woman's eyes narrowed in irritation as she snapped back, calling him insane. She reminded him of his betrayal, how he had shamelessly cheated on her with her best friend, and scoffed at the idea that he still wanted to force marriage on her after that. Jiang Yu completely ignored her accusations, stubbornly insisting that their engagement party had already been held. To him, the wedding was inevitable, no matter what she said. The woman's expression twisted in disgust as she fired back, accusing him of being nothing more than a shameless opportunist, using her as a cover while secretly entertaining both men and women on the side. At that moment, the system's voice echoed in the protagonist's mind, presenting 2 options. Option 1, walk away peacefully and still claim a reward. Option 2, strike the man, gaining a physical enhancement and a bad luck card. The enhancement promised to boost every attribute of his body. Without a moment's hesitation, the protagonist clenched his fist and delivered a devastating punch straight to Jiang Yu's face. The woman gasped in shock, stunned by his sudden move. But the protagonist didn't stop there. He followed up with a brutal kick, sending his rival sprawling onto the ground. Jiang Yu groaned in agony as the protagonist stomped down mercilessly, while the woman's eyes lit up, clearly entertained by his dominant attitude. Her affection toward him quietly rose, even as Jiang Yu screamed in pain across the ballroom floor. Desperate and humiliated, Jiang Yu cried out for help, begging the hotel security to intervene. When they rushed in to de-escalate the situation, he shouted angrily at them, demanding that they arrest the protagonist and threatening to call the police himself. He even warned the staff that he would have them all fired if they didn't comply. But the woman quickly stepped forward to shield the protagonist, declaring that he was only defending her from harassment. Still, Jiang Yu sneered and pointed at the security cameras, boasting that everything had been recorded and that they were all finished. Suddenly, chaos erupted. A man burst into the ballroom wielding a knife. Screams filled the air as panic swept through the crowd. The intruder lunged forward. In a chilling voice, he demanded the hotel staff bring him the couple who had betrayed him, or else everyone in the room would pay the price. Terrified, Jiang Yu immediately betrayed his pride, shouting at the guards to find the people the attacker wanted, hoping to save his own skin. In the middle of the commotion, the system once again presented the protagonist with a choice. Escape with the girl and claim a cash reward, or stand his ground, stop the crime, and earn a powerful new skill. The protagonist chose to act, not just for his own gain, but for the safety of everyone in the hall. After all, the system's reward wasn't something he could ignore. Just before moving, he remembered the item he had secured earlier. That bad luck card might be the key to turning this situation around. Activating the enhancement, a brilliant blue aura erupted around him, wrapping his body in a radiant glow. His muscles tensed, his senses sharpened, and a surge of raw power coursed through his veins. For the first time, he felt the overwhelming rush of strength that came with the system's gift. Without wasting another second, the protagonist launched forward. His fist connected squarely with the intruder's face, the impact echoing through the hall. The aggressor had no time to react. One clean strike was all it took. In an instant, the knife-wielding man collapsed to the floor, unconscious. The crowd froze, stunned by the display, while the protagonist stood tall, victorious. Gasps rippled through the hall. The woman's eyes widened in shock, realizing in that moment that he wasn't just a wealthy young master, he was a force to be reckoned with. Even her ex-fiancé, who only moments ago had been arrogant and loud, now trembled with fear, staring at the protagonist as though he were a monster in human form. Murmurs spread among the guests as they praised his courage and whispered about how effortlessly he had handled the situation. Moments later, the police arrived and swiftly detained the unconscious intruder. One officer thanked the protagonist personally for stepping in during such chaos. But just when the air seemed to settle, the ex-fiancé pounced on the opportunity. He pointed straight at the hero and shouted, accusing him of assault, demanding his immediate arrest. The officer turned to the protagonist, questioning if the claim was true. But before he could answer, the woman stepped forward. With fire in her voice, she explained that her ex had been trying to force her into marriage, manipulating her for his own twisted reasons. Her loyalty and honesty in that moment caused her affection level toward him to skyrocket, reaching 90. Realizing how deeply she was starting to fall for him, the protagonist gently pulled her into his arms, assuring her in front of everyone that he would never allow a scumbag like that to threaten her again. The officer attempted to calm both parties, but the rival continued to scream, demanding the hotel's security footage to prove his so-called innocence. Bruised but unfazed, the protagonist decided this was the perfect moment to test the system's bad luck card. Locking his gaze on the arrogant ex-fiancé, he activated the item. Instantly, a faint, ominous aura shimmered around the man, though he remained blissfully unaware of the misfortune closing in on him. Almost immediately, his phone buzzed. Answering with a scowl, his face drained of color as the bank informed him of a suspicious withdrawal, 200,000 gone in an instant. Stammering in disbelief, he barely had time to react before a frantic woman rushed over, blurting out that a tree had crashed onto his car outside. Panic consumed him. The officer, watching the scene unfold, asked if he needed assistance, but the ex-fiancé waved him off desperately, shouting that he didn't have time to deal with this. Without another word, he bolted out of the hall, leaving only a trail of shame and confusion behind. The protagonist smirked to himself, thinking the fool had finally gotten what he deserved. Turning back to the woman, he calmly suggested they leave the chaotic scene together. She agreed, and moments later, the two slipped away. 5 minutes later, inside the quiet of her room, the woman's expression softened. Worry clouded her eyes as she stepped closer, asking if he was hurt during the fight. He met her concern with a confident smile, brushing it off, explaining that someone as pathetic as that ex could never truly injure him. Still, she insisted, gently placing her hands on him, checking for wounds, determined to see for herself that he was unharmed. After a pause, her voice wavered as she asked if he would look down on her for once being engaged to a man like that. The young man shook his head, his tone warm and reassuring. He reminded her it wasn't her fault and listened as she explained that the engagement had been forced by her grandfather, and only later did she discover her fiancé's betrayal with her best friend. He placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice steady and full of conviction. He told her she had endured more than enough, but she wasn't alone anymore, because now, he was here to protect her. The young woman hesitated, her cheeks faintly pink, before asking if he truly minded keeping this type of relationship, something lighter, easier than a serious romance. For a heartbeat, she looked almost vulnerable. Without hesitation, the protagonist pulled her into his arms, holding her close. In a calm but resolute voice, he assured her he didn't mind at all. From this moment forward, he promised, he would treat her well, cherishing the bond they now shared. That night, the two surrendered to the heat of the moment. For her, it was an experience far more intense than she had ever expected, and for him, it was the beginning of something he didn't want to let go of. By the next morning, the aftermath still lingered in the air. Two maids entered the room to tidy up, whispering to each other as they worked. One sighed enviously, remarking on the sheer stamina of young people these days. The other chuckled, joking that if her own husband were like that, she wouldn't even have the strength to get up and do chores. Both women exchanged glances filled with envy as they continued their tasks. Later, the protagonist and the woman sat together at a cozy cafe, sharing breakfast. While she enjoyed her tea, he casually scrolled through his phone. His feed showed a classmate proudly flaunting an expensive watch, a coming-of-age gift from his mother. A sly idea lit up in his mind. Setting his phone down, he looked at the woman with a mischievous grin and asked if he could borrow her legs for a celebratory photo. She blinked in surprise, teasingly asking if it was his birthday. Shaking his head, he explained with a playful smirk that he wanted to post a gift much more special, something his classmates could never dream of showing off. The woman rolled her eyes at his bold request, but a faint smile tugged at her lips. "You really are such a brat," she muttered, though she still agreed to his little prank. With surprising confidence, she leaned back and struck a daring pose, lifting her long legs just as he wanted. The protagonist grinned, quickly snapping the shot. Not stopping there, she slipped off her shoes and changed poses again, laughing as he angled the camera. He was clearly having fun, snapping away with a cheeky thought in his head, "Forget cars. My 18th birthday gift is faster than any supercar." Moments later, he edited the pictures into a slick collage and uploaded it to his social media. Within minutes, his classmates flooded the post. Shock, envy, and disbelief poured in. Some regretted bragging about their expensive watches and cars, realizing their boring gifts didn't even compare. A while later, our protagonist headed straight to a luxury car dealership. At the grand entrance, a sharp-dressed saleswoman welcomed him with a professional smile. She offered him a personal tour, and he agreed, following her into the gleaming showroom lined with dream machines. But inside, his attention was caught by a disturbing scene. An older bald man was hovering far too close to a beautiful young woman. With an oily grin, he boasted about buying her a car, insisting it was so he could drive her home every day. The woman's expression betrayed her discomfort as he leaned closer, even trying to brush his hand against her. The slimy attempt at charm only made her shrink back. And at that moment, our protagonist's eyes narrowed. He watched the scene unfold from a distance and couldn't help but think that he had come to the dealership to see cars, yet ended up witnessing something more like a soap opera. It didn't take long for him to recognize the young woman. She was Swan, someone he knew would one day rise to fame as one of the four little flowers of the acting world. The memory came back clearly. Her popularity had started with a single iconic photograph, one where she was stepping out of a pool, an image that went viral online and launched her career. Back in the present, the bald businessman continued to pressure her. He insisted that she accompany him for a drink, but Swan firmly refused, explaining that she had a company meeting she couldn't miss. The old man's smile quickly faded, his face twisting in anger. He warned her not to test his patience, threatening to cancel the investment in her project. He leaned closer, lowering his voice, and told her to stop pretending. If she didn't accept his offer, he would use his influence to have her blacklisted from the industry. Despite the threats, Swan stood her ground. She looked him straight in the eye and declared that her answer was no. Whether he invested or not, it made no difference to her, and he could do whatever he wanted. At that exact moment, a familiar blue screen appeared before the protagonist. The system had triggered a special mission, and its directive was clear: help Swan and sign a contract with her. Reading the task, he quickly realized what needed to be done. If he wanted her trust, he would have to prove that he had both the power and the money to back it up. Without hesitation, he turned toward the saleswoman nearby. Raising his voice so everyone in the dealership could hear, he confidently asked her about the conditions for purchasing a LaFerrari. The saleswoman calmly explained that the model he had pointed out was a limited edition, restricted only to select buyers. To even qualify for purchase, the customer first needed to own 5 other cars from the same brand. Hearing this, the protagonist gave a faint smile. He leaned forward slightly and asked if she was implying that he wasn't qualified to buy such a car. The woman, a little flustered, quickly clarified that it wasn't impossible, it was just that the requirements were strict. Curious, he asked how, then, one could truly get the vehicle. From nearby, the bald old businessman watched the exchange closely. His eyes narrowed as suspicion grew. He wondered which powerful family this young man might belong to, or if perhaps he was only bluffing to make himself look impressive. The actress Swan, however, was utterly stunned. Not even Ba Song, a wealthy figure she knew, would casually buy a car worth $3 million. Yet this young man wasn't just interested, he wanted the most expensive model and insisted on paying in cash. The saleswoman, regaining her composure, warned him that with customizations and fees, the total cost could easily reach 50 million yuan. But the protagonist didn't even blink. With that same calm smile, he simply said he knew the price, and that it was perfectly acceptable. Hearing this, the woman excused herself and quickly left to fetch her manager. Moments later, the manager returned, accompanied by a familiar face. A young blonde man from the auction recognized the protagonist the instant he saw him, and his expression lit up with excitement. He greeted him warmly in the middle of the dealership, drawing everyone's attention. The protagonist, casual as ever, explained that he had only just arrived in the city, and since he wasn't used to being without a car, he thought he'd pick one up on the spot. The blonde man couldn't help but laugh at the answer, calling it the highest level of humble bragging he had ever heard. Then, as if to drive the point home, the blonde pointed toward the $18 million watch shining on the protagonist's wrist. Turning to the manager, he declared with a grin that the man was about to close the biggest sale of his career. The young man stood tall in the center of the dealership, his confidence radiating as the light from his luxury watch caught everyone's eyes. The glittering accessory alone spoke volumes, and the manager froze in shock when he recognized its value. He immediately realized this wasn't just any customer, this was an elite client with unimaginable wealth. With a respectful smile, the manager assured him that the credit check would be nothing more than a formality, before quickly beginning the car registration process. Around them, everyone watched in stunned silence. The actress Swan and the bald old man could hardly believe what they were seeing, while the blonde friend chuckled to himself. He thought he had met rich heirs before, but never one as extravagant as this. Doing a quick calculation in his head, the blonde estimated that this young man's fortune had to be well over 100 million yuan. Meanwhile, the bald old man, realizing he had been overshadowed, lost interest in the car entirely. He turned his attention back to Swan, demanding that she accompany him for a drink. But once again, she refused, calmly explaining that she had a meeting to attend. Her words only fueled his anger. With a scowl, he gave her a final ultimatum: either she went with him now, or she could say goodbye to her career. And with that, he stormed out of the dealership in fury. Just as the atmosphere was beginning to settle, the protagonist spoke up, calling Swan by name. She turned around in surprise, unsure if he was really addressing her. He nodded and introduced himself as Zhang Chang, boldly announcing that since the other investor had pulled out, he would step in and finance her project instead. The actress froze, her eyes wide with disbelief. Could this man truly be serious? If so, he was on an entirely different level than anyone she had dealt with before, and the one person capable of saving her from this crisis. When she asked if it was really true, the young man confirmed, but added that he had other matters to handle first. They could discuss the details tomorrow. Relieved, Swan asked for his contact information, and the two exchanged numbers before she smiled and promised to meet him the next day. After she left, the protagonist turned back to business, asking the manager when he could expect to take home his new car. Unfortunately, the man explained that the wait for delivery would be at least 1 full year. Hearing this, the young man sighed in disappointment. A whole year was far too long. The protagonist's blonde friend came up with a solution to the car problem. He invited him to an exclusive car show happening in just a few days, where he could secure a luxury model instantly. Intrigued, the young man agreed without hesitation. Later that evening, the protagonist arrived at a luxurious restaurant. His new girlfriend spotted him from across the room and eagerly waved him over. With a bright smile, she took his hand and guided him to her table, warmly recommending the house specialty, crab roe rice. As the dishes began to arrive, the table quickly filled with an array of elegant, finely prepared food. The atmosphere between them was warm, intimate, and almost dreamlike, as though the world around them no longer mattered. Leaning closer, the protagonist whispered softly in her ear, saying that all he wanted was to share a special night with her. She blushed lightly and responded with a playful pout, asking him to let her rest. After all, the previous night had been exhausting for them both. He chuckled and agreed, but only on one condition: she had to call him by a sweeter, more affectionate nickname than before. With a shy yet mischievous smile, she leaned in, called him hubby, and sealed it with a gentle kiss. Satisfied with her affection, he let her rest a little longer. She looked up at him with her cutest expression, softly praising him for being so thoughtful, saying he truly was the best. The conversation then shifted. He asked her if she happened to know Swan. She nodded, explaining that the famous actress worked for the same company as her. But then, her expression dimmed ever so slightly. With a hint of sadness in her eyes, she asked if he was really starting to fall for Swan. The protagonist calmly reassured her. It wasn't about falling in love; what he saw in Swan was potential. He explained that during their encounter at the car dealership, he recognized her hidden talent. His girlfriend let out a small sigh, admitting that the company Swan worked for didn't truly value her. And yet, despite being overlooked, she undeniably had the ability to rise far in her career. The atmosphere between them softened as she looked at him with gentle eyes. With a quiet voice, she said that if he really liked Swan, she could help him. And as for herself, he could always come to her whenever he wanted; she didn't mind other arrangements. The protagonist chuckled and reached out, patting her head softly. "Silly girl," he told her. "Don't worry. Whether it's you or someone else, as long as she's my woman, I'll treat her well. Understand?" She nodded with a small smile. "Yeah, I understand. So, you really want to invest in Swan now?" "That's right," he replied calmly. "I want to sign with her and invest in her future." But she warned him, explaining that Swan's contract hadn't expired yet. If he truly wanted to sign her, he would likely need to cover her termination fee, which could cost several million. Not only that, he would also have to set up a company to officially sign with her. The protagonist didn't even flinch. Don't worry about the capital, he reassured her. Once the company is established, I'll hand it over to you to manage. I won't interfere, and I can even give you some shares. Inwardly, he thought to himself that the system would provide all the funding needed. As long as Swan was given proper resources, she could rise to fame in just 2 years, and by then, she would bring back enormous profit. But the girl shook her head. With firm determination, she refused the idea of shares. Instead, she said she would only handle the company's operation and management. In her heart, she thought that being promoted from a department director to the manager of an entire company was already a huge step up. The authority and influence that came with the role meant more than enough to her. As for her salary, she believed he would naturally give her something worthy. The protagonist smiled at her stubbornness and shook his head. You're really too silly, girl. Why are you trying to keep distance between us when there's no need? Her emotion suddenly overwhelmed her. She leaned in closer, placing her hands on his face as her voice trembled. Before I met you, my life had no meaning. Every day, I was being pushed toward marriages I never wanted, forced by people with cruel intentions. But then you appeared, and for the first time, I felt the joy of simply being alive. Only with you do I feel like life has meaning. And that alone already makes me happy. As he embraced her, his phone suddenly buzzed on the table. He glanced at it and saw a new message. It was from Swan. She was asking about the time and place of their meeting tomorrow. A faint smile tugged at his lips. The rising star seemed to be in quite a hurry to secure his support. That's it for today's episode. If you want to catch what happens next, hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and drop a comment with your favorite moment. While you wait, don't miss these 4 amazing new manhwa we've picked just for you. You're going to love them. See you in the next part.